You know, virtually everyone in the days of Jesus lived in a stone house. Well, in today's teaching, we're going to enter a reconstructed stone house, and we're going to talk about the authority of Jesus to heal and to forgive sins. Shalom, and thanks for joining us for yet another teaching from the Bible, specifically Mark chapter 2. It's a great story, and in my humble perspective, it's really a moving story, because here we have Jesus serving his people in Capernaum. Now, the reconstructed house that we're going to enter is actually in a place called Katzrin. It's actually from a village, an ancient village, from the Talmudic period. So that means approximately from the 3rd through the 7th or so century A.D. So, of course, these ruins are a few hundred years later or after the time of Jesus, but I have to think that probably nothing much changed in terms of stone houses. So we're going to go into a stone house that has been reconstructed so that we can see the story of Mark 2 unfold before our very eyes. And we're going to take a look and listen to some of the details that's going to be read from within the house as we see this wonderful story of healing and, of course, forgiveness as well, as Jesus encounters and befriends this lame man who was dropped from the roof to him by 4 of his friends. And, of course, we're going to hear the story in detail as it is completed there in Mark 2. It actually happened in Capernaum, a city right on the northwest corner of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus actually made Capernaum his home base for his ministry in the Galilee area. But we're going to go into the Golan Heights to sit in this reconstructed house at a place called Katzrin, and again see the story unfold before our very eyes. It's a story from Mark chapter 2. Let's go together. The modern city of Katzrin today is the largest city in the Golan Heights. Within the city, ancient ruins were found from the Talmudic period, or from about the 3rd through the 7th century A.D. Now, while these ruins date hundreds of years after the time of the 1st century, our interest is to enter a reconstructed stone house as we try to picture what a house in Jesus' day looked like. For after all, stone houses probably didn't change much from the 1st century. So as we enter this house, we're going to remember a story that actually took place in Capernaum as recorded in Mark chapter 2. Here is that house that we're going to enter as we consider the authoritative ministry of Jesus. Let's go down to this house now. Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Katzrin. This was a Jewish village at the time of the Talmudic period. Here we see a partially reconstructed house that gives us a sense of how people lived in the days of Jesus. Here at Katzrin, there has even been a house that has been completely restored. So this is the house that today is called the house of Rabbi Abun. He was a leading rabbi who lived here in this city. As we enter this reconstructed stone house, we enter, first of all, through the door. The mezuzah is located on the side of the door, and we see immediately the oven of the house. Sometimes ovens were also located out in the courtyard, but here is the oven just inside the entrance of this dwelling. Most likely this was the area of the kitchen, with utensils and storage vessels on the shelf. Around the corner on the other side of the kitchen is the family area. Again, you can see storage areas and shelves and a ladder that would have gone up to the sleeping region of the house. These stone houses, as in the days of Jesus, were lit with oil lamps. Mark chapter 2 tells us that a few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door. And he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now some of the teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, "Why does this fellow talk like this? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Immediately Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking in their hearts, and he said to them, "Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier, to say to this paralyzed man, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up, take your mat, and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the man, "I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home." He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this." So it was probably in a similar house like this, where Jesus displays not only his authority to heal this man, but he also forgave his sins. This man was transformed, not only physically, but also spiritually. Within the culture of that day, this man had no chance of his sins being forgiven. And yet Jesus offers a word of forgiveness. Praise be to God that Jesus still offers his touch of healing and forgiveness for us today. So sitting in this stone house, especially with a crowd of people who typically travel with us, it's sort of fun to crowd into this main living quarters, this room, if you will, of this house, because that's exactly what the text of Mark 2 tells us. They were crowded into this house, and all of a sudden Jesus looks up and he sees some dust, of course, fall from the ceiling or the roof, and all of a sudden an opening is made, and this guy is lowered down to Jesus. Of course, you notice that the cross beams were countered with some shorter sticks, and as we know of this in even the days of the Old Testament, typically the flat roof had a mud-packed casing upon it or on it. It was actually rolled into a hard surface so that, of course, it protected against the wind and the rain, of course, in the winter months. So these four guys must have somehow removed that mud level, and then, of course, the twigs, and then through these big beams lowered this lame man down to Jesus. And Jesus not only displays authority, this is the word smeka, it's a rabbinic term that means authority, but Jesus not only displays, of course, authority in healing this man, but even more so, he forgives his sins. And what a wonderful story of how this hopeless man, really void of any hope in his life because he was viewed as an outcast, culturally speaking, and yet Jesus not only befriends him, but also forgives his sin. So a great story of transformation, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well as we were in this house together, and as we envisioned this story taking place right before our very eyes. So thanks so much for joining us, and again, until next time, may God's peace and salvation be yours as you look to Jesus as the author and finisher of your faith. Shalom until next time.